There's something haunting about a song that carries the weight of an entire kingdom, the kind of melody that lingers in the air like a whisper of forgotten gold, an echo of what once was and what might yet be. Tonight, we step into the world of Thorin Oakenshield, standing alone on a windswept cliff, his eyes fixed on the distant shadow of the lonely mountain. It's more than a place to him. It's a memory, a dream, a throne stolen by fire and scale. And as the wind carries the faint strains of the Song of Durin, we're reminded that some stories aren't just told, they're felt deep in the bones. Wherever you're listening from, whether it's late under a blanket of stars or early with the first light of dawn, we'd love to know, what time does your journey into this tale begin? Let us know in the comments below, because tonight, we're all travelers in this story together. Close your eyes for a moment and picture it, the cold bite of mountain air, the hush of a world holding its breath. Thorin's fingers tighten around the hilt of his sword, not just in anger, but in longing. The Song of Durin isn't just a lament, it's a map of loss, a dirge for halls that once echoed with laughter and the clang of hammers on anvils. Can you hear it? That faint, mournful tune threading through the wind. It's the sound of a people unmoored, of a king without a crown, and yet there's something else there too. A spark, a stubborn hope that refuses to be extinguished, no matter how many years pass or how many dragons rise. This is where our story begins, on the edge of a reckoning. Thorin Oakenshield doesn't just carry a sword, he carries the hopes of every dwarf who ever whispered his name like a prayer. The lonely mountain isn't just a pile of stone, it's a promise. And as we settle into this tale, let yourself feel the weight of it, the chill of the cliffside, the ache of memory, the quiet fury of a leader who knows his destiny is written in stone and starlight. This isn't just a bedtime story, it's an invitation to walk alongside a legend, to hear the Song of Durin as if it were sung just for you. So take a deep breath and let's begin. The mountain waits. Thorin's footsteps echo through the winding paths of the blue mountains, his cloak pulled tight against the evening chill. He finds Gandalf seated beneath an ancient oak, smoke curling from his pipe like wisps of forgotten spells. The dwarf's voice is low but unyielding as he speaks of Erebor, its halls plundered, its throne defiled. No more waiting, he growls. The time to reclaim what is ours has come. Gandalf's brow furrows, his eyes dark with foresight. Dragons are not so easily undone, Thorin Oakenshield. He warns, the weight of centuries in his words. Smaug's wrath still burns beneath that mountain, but Thorin's gaze doesn't waver. Firelight dances in his eyes, mirroring the stubborn flame that has kept his people's hope alive all these years. One by one, they come, dwarves with calloused hands and hearts full of old grievances. There's Balin, wise as the stones he once carved, his stories of Erebor's glory days, stirring something fierce in the others. Dwalin, broad-shouldered and battle-scarred, sharpens his axes with a quiet fury. Fili and Kili, young and restless, their laughter masking the steel in their veins. Around the fire, they trade tales of lost kin and stolen gold, their voices weaving a tapestry of shared longing. The air hums with something deeper than strategy. It's kinship, a reckoning, the unspoken vow that they will either reclaim their home or leave their bones upon its slopes. Gandalf watches from the shadows, his silence heavier than any counsel. He knows what Thorin refuses to say aloud. This quest is more than a king's pride. It's the last ember of a dying legacy, and as the dwarves clasp forearms and pour ale into battered cups, the old wizard feels the turn of fate in the wind. The company of Thorin Oakenshield is no accident, it's a spark thrown into tinder, waiting for the right moment to blaze. The door of Bag End creaks, open to reveal a flustered Bilbo Baggins, his waistcoat buttons straining as he gasps at the sight of 13 dwarves crowding his tidy hobbit hole. Crumbs of seed cake cling to his fingers, proof of his interrupted supper, as Gandalf's towering frame looms behind him with an air of mischief. This, the wizard announces, is your burglar. Thorin's jaw tightens, his gaze sweeping over Bilbo's bare feet and round belly with undisguised scorn. You expect this halfling to survive the wilds, let alone outwit a dragon. The words drip with ice, but Gandalf merely exhales a smoke ring that curls like a challenge. Hobbits are remarkably light on their feet when the need arises, he counters, though the dwarves' doubtful mutters fill the room like the buzz of unsettled bees. Bilbo's ears burn as he clutches a teacup like a shield. The dwarves' skepticism is a living thing, Bofur's raised eyebrow, Gloin's muttered tally of Bilbo's soft hands. Even young Ori, usually quick with a friendly smile, hesitates before passing the salt cellar. Only Balin offers a measured nod, though his voice carries a grandfather's patience when he asks, "Can you pick a lock, lad?" Bilbo's stammered reply about respectable hobbits not making a habit of theft earns a chorus of groans. Thorin turns away, his silence louder than any protest. The unspoken question hangs thick. Has their leader's judgment faltered at the first hurdle? Yet beneath the doubt, something else stirs. Gandalf watches as Bilbo, despite his trembling knees, refills each dwarf's plate without being asked. A small act, but one that speaks of a heart larger than his stature. The wizard catches Thorin's eye and nods toward the hobbit, now nervously straightening a knocked-over tankard. "Remember," he murmurs, "the mightiest oaks grow from the smallest acorns." Thorin's expression remains unreadable, but his fingers tap the map of Erebor spread across Bilbo's table, a rhythm like distant drums, or perhaps the first faint heartbeat of a plan not yet fully formed. The company's fate, it seems, now rests as much on this reluctant burglar's shoulders as on their own axes. The night swallows the last flickering lights of Hobbiton as the company slips into the shadows, their bootsteps muffled by dew-damp grass. Thorin strides ahead without glancing back, his silhouette cutting a sharp line against the moonlit road, a king without borders, yet burdened by them all the same. Behind him, Bilbo hesitates at the edge of his own gate, one hand clutching the brass knob as if it might anchor him to the warmth of his hearth. A gust carries the scent of pipe smoke from Gandalf's direction, mingling with the earthy perfume of turned soil and distant rain. It's the smell of the Shire, and for a breath, Bilbo's resolve wavers. Then a twig snaps under his foot, and the dwarves pause as one, their eyes reflecting the stars like chips of flint. No one speaks. The silence is answer enough. There's no turning back now. The wild greets them with teeth. First, it's the wind, no longer the gentle rustle of party tree branches, but a keening wail through rocky crevices. Then the howls, distant but closing in, stitching a cold thread of dread through the company's ranks. Thorin halts abruptly, his palm raised. The dwarves freeze, axes bristling like the quills of a cornered beast. Wargs, Dwalin mutters, his voice sandpaper rough. Bilbo's stomach lurches. He's read about those teeth in his mother's old beshiri, jagged as mountain peaks, made for tearing. Ori's fingers tremble against his slingshot, but Thorin's stance never wavers. Stay close, he orders, and though the words are for everyone, his gaze flicks to Bilbo. It isn't kindness, it's calculus. A hobbit's scream would bring the pack running. They press onward, their path lit by slivers of moonlight that dodge the thickening clouds. Bilbo's toes curl in his stolen moments of courage, each step away from home, feeling like a betrayal, each step forward like a dare. The dwarves don't mock him now. Their focus is split between the dark tree line and Thorin's rigid back. Leadership weighs differently here, beyond maps and mead halls. It's in the way Thorin's shoulders don't bow when the howls multiply, in the way he adjusts their route without debate, guiding them toward a jagged outcrop where rock might guard their flanks. Balin murmurs approval, but Gandalf's staff glows faintly blue in the gloom, a silent warning. The wizard knows what Thorin won't admit. Wolves are the least of what hunts in these hills. Dawn finds them huddled in the lee of boulders, their breath frosting the air. Bilbo rubs his arms, stunned by the ache of unaccustomed miles. Across the circle, Thorin sharpens Orchrist with methodical strokes, the steel's song counterpoint to Bofur's soft humming, a mining tune from Erd Luin, meant to steady nerves. Philly tosses Bilbo a strip of jerky with a grin that doesn't reach his eyes. Cheer up, burglar, he teases, but the words lack bite. They all heard it, the skitter of claws on stone, just before first light, the sniffing too deliberate for any natural beast. The road has marked them already, and as the company rises to march again, Thorin's hand lingers on the pommel of his sword, his fingers tracing the runes like a promise. Home isn't just a place in a moor, it's something they'll have to carve back from the dark. The forest smells of damp earth and something fouler, rotted meat and unwashed hide. The company's fire has burned low, its embers painting the trees in flickering shadows when the first snort echoes through the underbrush. Too loud for a deer. Too deliberate. Thorin's hand flies up, fingers splayed in warning, but it's too late. The trolls crash into the clearing like boulders dislodged from a cliffside, their stench rolling ahead of them like a wave. Bert's club drags grooves in the dirt as he licks cracked lips. Ain't a dwarf in ages, he rumbles, while Tom and William loom behind him, their beady eyes reflecting the dying firelight like dull coins. Chaos erupts. Dwalin swears as a meaty fist closes around his ankle, hoisting him upside down. Billy and Killy dart between the troll's legs, knives flashing, but William's tree trunk arm sweeps them into a sack like wayward kittens. Thorin's roar of fury cuts through the night, form ranks, but the order dissolves as Bert's grubby fingers close around his cloak, lifting him eye to eye with yellowed teeth, the size of daggers. This one's got a mouth on him, the troll chuckles, giving Thorin a shake that would rattle the sense from a lesser dwarf. Bilbo, pressed flat against a mossy log, feels his heart hammering against his ribs. This isn't the Shire's gentle darkness, where the worst predators are foxes after chickens. These are monsters from his childhood nightmares, now sniffing the air for his scent. Then something shifts, not in the clearing, but in Bilbo's chest, as the trolls argue over whether to roast the dwarves immediately or let them stew a bit. He remembers Gandalf's words, Burglar, and the way Thorin's eyes had darkened with doubt. The company needs time. Dawn can't be far off. Swallowing hard, Bilbo steps into the firelight, his voice surprisingly steady. "Excuse me, gentlemen," he begins, and the absurd politeness of it makes even Tom pause mid-swig from a stolen ale cask. What follows is a masterclass in misdirection. Bilbo flatters their non-existent culinary skills, plants seeds of distrust between them. Bert's clearly the cleverest. Shouldn't he decide the menu? And spins such a web of nonsense about dwarves carrying parasites that the trolls spend precious minutes debating the best way to scrub the seasoning in. Thorin, trussed like a boar on a spit, watches Bilbo with narrowed eyes. Every hobbitish fib buys another grain of sand in the hourglass, another sliver of moonlight slipping toward the horizon. When the trolls finally lose patience and reach for the skewers, Bilbo's voice cracks with desperation. "Wait, have you ever tried sautéed dwarf?" The absurdity stalls them just long enough for the first sliver of dawn to pierce the trees. Stone creeps up Bert's legs like frost on a windowpane. His howl of betrayal cuts off mid-bellow as he solidifies into a grotesque statue, mouth forever open in outrage. Silence, then the dwarves' collective exhale, punctuated by the thud of ropes hitting dirt as they wriggle free. No one cheers. They eye Bilbo with a mix of awe and bewilderment, as if he's grown a second head. Thorin brushes off Balin's helping hand, his gaze locked on the hobbit. "You stalled them," he says, and it's not quite gratitude, more the grudging tone of a commander acknowledging a useful tactic. But when Bilbo mutters something about buying time, Thorin's grunt carries the weight of a shifted world view. Then Gloin kicks over a troll-sized cooking pot, revealing a gleam of steel beneath. Swords, beautiful, deadly things, their edges still sharp despite the grime. Thorin lifts one reverently, the morning light catching on elvish runes along the blade. "Orchrist," he murmurs, and the name hangs in the air like a vow. The weapon fits his grip as if forged for him, and when he turns it toward the rising sun, the reflection paints a streak of fire across his face. Home isn't just a mountain and a moor, it's a blade pointing east. Rivendell rises from the mist like a dream, carved in living stone waterfalls, cascading over arched bridges, lanterns glowing like captive stars among the trees. The air here hums with a quiet music, the sort that seeps into weary bones and whispers of rest. Yet Thorin's shoulders remain rigid as the company crosses the final bridge, his boots striking the elven stone with deliberate force. We linger only long enough to decipher the map, he mutters, though the way his eyes linger on the valley's tranquil beauty betrays more than he'd admit. Gandalf, striding ahead with the ease of an old friend, doesn't bother hiding his smirk. Even kings must sometimes accept gifts, Thorin Oakenshield, especially those wrapped in wisdom. Elrond meets them on a terrace open to the sky, his robes pooling around him like silvered shadow. The Lord of Rivendell moves with the patience of centuries, his gaze missing nothing. The dirt caked in the dwarves' braids, the way Bilbo's fingers twitch toward his untouched wine goblet, the map clutched in Thorin's white-knuckled grip. "Ah," Elrond says, and the single syllable carries the weight of recognition. "The key to your quest, I presume." Thorin's jaw works, pride and pragmatism warring behind his eyes, but Gandalf's pointed cough loosens his fingers. The parchment unfurls across the table, its edges worn soft by generations of desperate hope. Moonlight spills over the map as Elrond traces the runes with fingertips that know the language of starlight. Moon letters, he murmurs, and the words send a shiver through the company. Written with Ithilden, visible only when the crescent moon kisses the parchment, as it did the night they were inked. Thorin leans in despite himself, his breath catching as hidden words shimmer to life. A path, a door, a single stroke of fate's pen. The last day of autumn, Elrond translates. When the thrush knocks and the setting sun aligns with the keyhole, for a heartbeat, the terrace holds its breath. Even the waterfalls seem to hush. Thorin's voice, when it comes, is gravel wrapped in velvet. You would give us this knowledge freely. The unspoken question lingers. Why would an elf aid dwarves in reclaiming a mountain? Elrond's smile is weary, wise. Smaug's shadow stretches far, Oakenshield. Some fires must be doused before they burn us all. The stars above seem to lean closer, their light etching the moment into memory. Somewhere in the valley, a nightingale sings, not of endings, but of paths that twist and turn before revealing their purpose. Thorin's fingers brush the map's edge, his pride bending just enough to nod. For now, the stars will keep their secrets, and the company will carry this fragile hope deeper into the east. The storm howls through the misty mountains like a living thing, its winds tearing at cloaks and numbing fingers to the bone. Rain slashes sideways, stinging faces and turning the narrow path into a treacherous river of mud. Even Thorin's voice, usually so commanding, is swallowed by the thunder as he barks orders to press onward. But the dwarves stagger under the weight of exhaustion. Bombur's legs shake with every step. Ori stumbles over roots he can no longer see, and Bilbo's breath comes in ragged gasps. When Boffer spots the cave mouth, yawning black against the cliffside, it's not a suggestion, it's surrender. Just till the storm passes, he pleads, wiping water from his eyes. Thorin's glare could melt stone, but even he can't argue with the way Dori sways where he stands. The cave is dry, at least. The company collapses in a heap of damp wool and muttered curses, their fireless circle clinging to what little warmth their bodies can muster. Thorin paces the perimeter, his boots scuffing against stone. Too convenient, he growls, fingers brushing the wall where the rock curves unnaturally smooth. This is no natural hollow, but his warnings are drowned out by Snorre's gloin, already curled around his axe like a child with a toy, Killy's head lolling against Filly's shoulder. Only Bilbo stays half awake, watching Thorin's shadow flicker against the wall. Something prickles at the back of his neck, a sensation he can't name, like the stillness between lightning and thunder when the world holds its breath. Then the floor gives way. Stone grinds against stone as hidden trapdoors swing open, sending the company tumbling into screaming darkness. Bilbo's stomach lurches as he falls, his cry lost in the chorus of dwarven shouts. They land in a tangled heap on a rope net, its fibers sticky with filth, just as torchlight blooms in the cavern below, hundreds of yellow eyes blinking open like cursed stars. Goblins, their shrieks pierce the air as they swarm upward, claws snatching at beards and weapons alike. Thorin's roar is raw with fury as Orchrist flashes, cleaving through the first wave, but for every goblin that falls, 3 more scuttle from the shadows. The cavern stinks of rot and rancid oil, the air thick with the reek of unwashed bodies and spoiled meat. The Goblin King's throne is a grotesque mound of broken shields and bones, his bloated body swaying to some discordant rhythm only he can hear. Oakenshield, he croons, his voice like nails dragged over slate. So kind of you to pay tribute to my halls. The dwarves are shoved to their knees, their weapons clattering into a pile just out of reach. Bilbo, smaller and quicker, manages to duck behind a stalagmite, his heart hammering so loud he's certain the goblins will hear it. Thorin stands despite the hands gripping his arms, his spine straight as a sword. Your halls, he sneers, spitting the words like poison. These are rat holes, fit only for cowards who steal sleeping travelers. The insult earns him a backhanded blow that splits his lip, but the Goblin King only giggles, his jowls quivering. Oh, we'll see who's cowardly when we peel the skin from your kin, one strip at a time. His clawed finger hovers over the company, each twitch drawing terrified gasps, until it lands on Bomber. Start with the fattest, he'll fry up nice. Chaos erupts. Dwalin lunges against his captors. Balin shouts a Cuzdal curse lost to the cacophony, and Philly twists free long enough to head, but a goblin square in the nose. But it's Thorin's voice that cuts through the din, sharp as a blade. You want a king's ransom. Let them go, and I'll lead you to Erebber's treasure. The lie hangs in the air, slick and tempting. The Goblin King's eyes narrow, but greed wins, his tongue darting over cracked lips. Liar, he hisses, though the gleam in his eyes says otherwise. Behind the throne, unnoticed in the frenzy, a shadow detaches from the wall. Bilbo's fingers close around a fallen dagger, its edge nicked but deadly enough. The goblins are too busy jeering to notice the hobbit's bare feet, soundless on stone, or the way his breath steadies as he takes aim. Thorin's gaze flicks past the Goblin King, just for a heartbeat, and Bilbo sees it. Not hope, not even trust, just the cold calculus of survival. The moment stretches, thin as spider's silk, before the cavern ceiling explodes in a rain of splintered wood and blinding light. Gandalf's staff burns like a fallen star, his voice thunder given form. Take up arms. The command sends goblins scattering like cockroaches. Swords fly through the air, caught by dwarven hands, and suddenly the company is a whirlwind of steel and fury. Thorin doesn't pause to thank the wizard. There's no time. Orchrist finds its mark again and again, each strike carrying the weight of a kingdom's vengeance. The Goblin King's howl of rage shakes the cavern as he lumbers forward, his mace swinging in a deadly arc. But Thorin ducks, pivots, and drives his blade upward in one fluid motion. The gargantuan body crumples, shaking the ground beneath them. Run, Gandalf bellows, and they do, stumbling over corpses and through narrow tunnels, the enraged shrieks of 1,000 goblins, chasing them like a living tide. Bilbo trips, his fingers scraping stone as he's yanked upright by Boffer. No one notices when his foot catches on a ring half buried in the dirt, the metal slipping silently into his pocket. The company runs, breath burning in their lungs, toward the distant promise of daylight. Behind them, the mountain itself seems to howl. The tunnels twist like the guts of some monstrous beast, the company's boots slipping on slime-slick stone as they flee the goblin horde. Thorin leads with Orchrist held high, its blade catching what little light filters through cracks in the rock. Each swing, carving a path through the screeching shadows. Behind him, Dwalin snarls as he lops off grasping fingers, while Philly and Killy fight back to back, their knives flashing in perfect tandem. The stench of goblin blood, sour as spoiled milk, fills the narrow passage, but there's no time to gag. Survival is a forward motion, a desperate scramble toward the faintest whisper of fresh air. Bilbo doesn't realize he's fallen behind until the dwarves' shouts fade into echoes. One wrong turn, a stumble over a loose stone, and suddenly he's alone in the suffocating dark. The damp walls press closer, their surfaces pulsing with the sickly glow of bioluminescent fungi. Then comes the sound, not the clatter of goblin feet, but something worse, a wet, guttural whisper. Precious, the hairs on Bilbo's neck rise as two pale eyes emerge from the blackness, floating like drowned moons. Gollum's voice is a blade dragged over bone. What has it got in its pocket seas? The creature circles, his elongated limbs twitching with hunger. Bilbo's hand drifts to the ring he'd pocketed earlier, its metal oddly warm. He doesn't know why he lies when he croaks, and nothing. What follows is a dance of words sharper than any dagger. Gollum's riddles slither from his cracked lips, each one a trap waiting to snap shut. Voiceless it cries, wingless flutters. Bilbo's mind races, his mother's old riddle book suddenly more valuable than mithril. Wind, he gasps, and Gollum's hiss of frustration is sweeter than spring water. But the game turns when Bilbo, desperate, whispers, "What have I got in my pocket?" It's not a riddle, it's a cheat, and Gollum's shriek of betrayal shakes the cavern. In the frenzy, Bilbo's fingers close around the ring, and without thinking, he slips it on. The world bends, colors drain. Gollum's furious sniffing passes through him, close enough to feel the creature's rancid breath. Bilbo's heart hammers, but he doesn't move, doesn't breathe. The ring's power thrums in his veins like a second heartbeat. Above ground, Thorin's chest aches with more than exhaustion. They've reached daylight, but the company is ragged, Balin wheezing, Ori's hands shaking too badly to knock an arrow, and no hobbit. Thorin's jaw tightens. He won't voice the thought, but it hangs between them all. They've lost their burglar to the mountain's belly. Then howls, not the distant cries of wild wolves, but the organized baying of wargs, their riders' armor clanking like a death knell. Azog's scouts, trees, Gandalf booms, and the dwarves scramble up the nearest pines, their boots scraping bark as the first orc arrows embed themselves in the trunks below. From his perch, Thorin watches the horizon darken with approaching riders. His grip on Orchrist whitens his knuckles. They've escaped goblins only to be cornered like treed foxes. And then movement, a flicker at the edge of his vision. Nothing more than a ripple in the air, really, but suddenly Bilbo is there, materializing beside him as if spat out by the shadows themselves. Thorin's breath catches. The hobbit's eyes are wide with something like terror, like wonder. There's no time for questions. The first warg leaps, its jaws snapping at the lowest branches, and the company braces for a fight that feels less like battle and more like the last stand of a dying dream. But Bilbo's fingers twitch toward the ring in his pocket. Its weight is a promise and a curse. Somewhere deep in the tunnels, Gollum's wails echo through the stone, a lament for the thing he's lost. And high in the pine trees, the wind carries another sound, the distant screech of eagles, though no one dares to hope just yet. The pines shudder under the weight of snapping jaws, their needles raining down like green shards of glass. Thorin grips Orchrist with hands gone numb from cold and fury, his boots braced against a branch that groans beneath him. Below, Azog's wargs circle like sharks, scenting blood, their yellowed fangs gleaming. The pale orc himself lounges atop a massive white warg, his cruel smile widening as he watches the trapped dwarves. Oakenshield, he calls, the name a mockery in his guttural tongue. Will you die hiding in the leaves, or shall I rip you from your nest? Thorin's knuckles whiten around his sword. Defeat isn't in his vocabulary, only the manner of his ending. Then the sky answers for him. A shadow darker than storm clouds blots out the sun, followed by a screech that splits the air like a battle horn. The first eagle dives with talons outstretched, plucking a warg from the ground as easily as a child might snatch a toy. Chaos erupts. Orcish arrows fly wide as the great birds wheel through the air, their wings kicking up gales that send the remaining wargs tumbling. Thorin barely has time to gasp before iron strong claws close around his shoulders, lifting him into the dizzying blue. The world tilts, treetops become a blur, the orc's furious cries fading beneath the rush of wind. For the first time in decades, Thorin is speechless. The eagle's feathers ripple like molten gold in the sunlight, their flight smooth as a well-forged blade cutting through silk. Below, the misty mountains shrink into wrinkles on the earth's skin, their dangers suddenly small and far away. Gandalf perches ahead on the lead eagle's back, his beard streaming behind him like a banner. When he turns, there's no smugness in his gaze, only quiet acknowledgement of debts older than kingdoms. Then Bilbo's voice, thin with awe, "Look, the lonely mountain rises on the horizon, its peak sharp as a spear point against the dawn." Thorin's breath catches. Distance makes it seem close enough to touch, yet the air between them hums with leagues untraveled and trials unseen. The wind carries something else now, not the stench of warg and orc, but the faintest thread of melody. Durin's song, it curls around Thorin's heart like a smith's hammer around hot iron, reshaping his resolve. The eagle's wings beat in time with the rhythm, as if they, too, hear the ancient call. Azog's snarls fade beneath the rush of feathers and sky. The company clutches one another, their laughter edged with disbelief. Only Thorin stays silent, his eyes locked on Erebor. The eagles haven't just saved their lives, they've reignited a fire that even Dragonflame couldn't extinguish. Below, the land unspools like a scroll, each mile a verse in a song still being written. The mountain waits, and for the first time since the quest began, Thorin lets himself believe it might be waiting for him. The Carrock rises from the plains like a fist thrust skyward, its stone weathered by centuries of wind and rain. The eagles deposit the company on its broad summit with surprising gentleness, their golden eyes lingering just a moment too long on Thorin before lifting back into the clouds. Gandalf brushes pine needles from his sleeves, his gaze already scanning the rolling grasslands below. "Shelter," he announces, "and an ally, if we mind our tongues." The dwarves exchange wary glances. After goblin tunnels and warg chases, the word ally feels as fragile as a spider's web. Beorn's hall appears as a mirage at the edge of a sunflower field, a vast wooden structure that seems grown rather than built, its beams curved like living branches. The air hums with the drowsy murmur of bees, their hives stacked high along the eaves, yet peace is an illusion here. The moment the company's boots crunch on the gravel path, a shadow detaches from the trees. Beorn unfolds to his full height, taller than any man has a right to be, his shoulders broad as an ox yoke. The skin changer's nostrils flare as he takes in the scent of dwarf, elf blade, and hobbit. Thieves, he rumbles, the word vibrating through the ground. Thorin steps forward before Gandalf can weave his usual diplomacy. We seek no plunder, he says, though his voice carries the edge of a king, unaccustomed to pleading. Only respite from the filth that hunts us, the same filth that took your people. Beorn's massive hands twitch at the mention of loss. His gaze flicks to the distant mountains, where orc fires burn like sores upon the land. The silence stretches, thick with memory, until the skin changer snorts. Dwarves spin pretty lies, he mutters, but the door creaks open behind him, releasing the scent of honeycake and hay. A grudging invitation. Inside, the hall is a cathedral of carved wood and sunlight. Beorn moves between tables hewn from entire tree trunks, setting out bowls of cream and loaves dark with rye. The dwarves eat like men half-starved, which they are, but Thorin picks at his food, his eyes drawn to the pelt draped over Beorn's chair. Bare fur, thick and glossy. A reminder that their host wears more than one skin. Gandalf coaxes the story from Beorn between pipefuls of fragrant leaf, how orcs slaughtered his kin, how the forests remember their screams. Thorin listens, and when the skin changer's voice cracks like breaking timber, something shifts in the dwarf's face. Not pity, recognition. Erebor was my home, Thorin says abruptly, his fingers tracing the whorls in the wooden table. Smaug took it as your enemies took these woods, not just gold, the marrow of who we were. The admission costs him. Pride tightens his jaw like a vise. But Beorn leans forward, his dark eyes reflecting the firelight. For the first time, he truly looks at Thorin, past the armor and the crownless brow, to the raw nerve beneath. Night falls with the weight of a fur blanket. The dwarves sprawl by the hearth, their snores harmonizing with the chirr of crickets. Only Thorin remains awake, staring at the ceiling where dried herbs hang in fragrant bundles. Beorn's words echo in his skull. Fire is a thief that leaves no bones to bury. Outside, an owl cries, somewhere beyond the fields, as ox hunters pace the dark. But here, for this single night, safety is a tangible thing. Warm as fresh bread, fleeting as a dream, Thorin's eyelids grow heavy. When sleep takes him, it brings no rest, only visions of molten gold and wings vast enough to blot out the sun. The dragon's voice coils through his mind, whispering in a tongue older than kingdoms. Come home, little king. He wakes with a gasp to find dawn painting the windowsill pink, and Beorn standing over him, holding a dagger the length of a man's forearm. For the road, the skin changer grunts. The blade is blackened steel, its edge honed to a whisper, a weapon fit for monster slaying. Thorin meets his gaze and nods once. No thanks are spoken, none are needed. As the company gathers their packs, Beorn watches from the porch, his arms crossed over his chest. The morning light gilds his scars, turning them into seams of gold. The orcs will come, he warns, his voice gravel and honey. They always do. Thorin adjusts his new dagger in its sheath, the weight of it a promise against his hip. Let them, he says, and for the first time since the eagles carried them from danger, something like a smile touches his lips. The road ahead is dark with unknowns, but today, at least, they walk it fed, armed, and however improbably, not entirely alone. Mirkwood looms before them like a living nightmare, its gnarled branches woven so tightly that even midday sunlight struggles to pierce the gloom. The air hangs thick with the scent of rotting leaves and something far worse, a sweetness gone rancid, like fruit left to ferment in the sun. Thorin halts at the forest's edge, his boots sinking into moss that squelches unnervingly underfoot. No fires, he warns, his voice low but iron hard. No straying from the path, this wood drinks madness like water. The dwarves shift uneasily, their usual grumbling muted by the oppressive silence. Even Gandalf's presence, usually a bulwark against fear, is absent, the wizard having vanished with cryptic words about older roads and darker business. Days blur together beneath the tangled canopy. Time twists here, stretching minutes into hours, hours into eternities. The path, once clear as a river's course, now seems to writhe under their feet, its edges blurring into the undergrowth. Hunger gnaws at their bellies like a living thing. Bomber's hands shake as he passes the last crumbling biscuit to Ori. The river they'd been warned against crosses their path, black as spilled ink, its surface eerily still. No choice, Boffer mutters, eyeing the rickety boat half sunk in the muck. Thorin's jaw tightens, but when Killy sways on his feet from exhaustion, the decision is made. The water doesn't splash. It absorbs the oars with a hungry sigh, the boat lurching forward as if dragged by unseen hands. Then, the scream, Philly's cry, slices through the fog as a tentacle of vine whips around his ankle, yanking him toward the depths. Thorin's axe flashes, severing the plant with a spray of sap that burns like acid. They reach the far bank gasping, only to realize the worst horror. Bomber lies motionless in the boat, his chest barely rising, eyes glazed as if peering into another world. The forest laughs in rustling whispers. Shadows coil around their ankles, the trees leaning closer with creaking groans. Dwalin swears he sees faces in the bark, wide, grinning mouths that vanish when he blinks. Thorin's orders grow hoarse with desperation. Ropes, tie yourselves together, but the dwarves' fingers fumble with knots, their minds fraying like old cloth. When Balin suddenly wanders into the undergrowth, murmuring about the mines of Moria, Thorin bodily drags him back, his voice cracking like a whip. Fight it. Then the webs appear. First, just strands, gossamer threads, catching the dim light like poisoned jewelry. Then thicker ropes, draping from the branches in grotesque curtains. The air thrums with a sound like 1,000 fingers plucking wet silk. Thorin's hand flies up, but it's too late. Dori vanishes with a muffled shriek, yanked into the canopy by something swift and many-legged. The company scatters, axes swinging, but the spiders are everywhere, their bulbous bodies dripping from the trees, their clicking mandibles dripping venom. Thorin's roar shakes the leaves. To me, Orchrist carves a silver arc through the darkness, severing a thread just before it snares Killy's throat. The dwarves rally, their blades flashing in a desperate circle, but for every spider that falls, 3 more scuttle from the shadows. Bilbo's small hand grips sting, the elven blade glowing blue as the creatures close in. The ring in his pocket burns like a coal, whispering of escape. But when Thorin staggers, a web line coiled around his sword arm, Bilbo does the unthinkable. He charges forward, lashing at the threads with a courage that surprises even him. The spiders recoil, hissing. For a heartbeat, The tide turns, then the canopy erupts with fresh horrors, a rain of skittering legs and needle-fanged mouths. Thorin meets Bilbo's gaze across the carnage, and something unspoken passes between them. No words, just the grim understanding that some forests don't let go of what they catch. The darkness presses closer, sticky and suffocating, and the last thing Thorin hears before the silk wraps his face is the distant, mocking laughter of the trees. Silk still clings to their beards when the elves appear, materializing between the trees like ghosts, draped in twilight. Their arrows gleam cold as hoarfrost, leveled at the dwarves' throats before the last spider leg stops twitching. Thorin wipes venom from Orchrist, his breath ragged, but his spine stays rigid as the blade in his hand. Thranduil's hounds, he spits, recognizing the intricate leaf patterns on their armor, the same ones that lined the halls of Erebor before the dragon came. The elf captain's smile is a knife's edge. Oakenshield, how the mighty have fallen. Mirkwood's dungeon is a living root system, its walls carved from the bones of ancient trees that pulse with slow, sap-thick life. Thorin's cell smells of damp earth and something older, the scent of time itself pressed into wood grain. His fingers trace the whorls in the oak door, counting the days by the faint glow of bioluminescent fungi creeping through the cracks. The elves don't bother with chains. They know these halls are a maze no dwarf could navigate. Bilbo's breath comes in shallow hiccups as he presses against the corridor wall, the ring's cool weight making the torchlight ripple around him like water. He's a shadow among shadows, slipping past guards who pause mid-stride, their pointed ears twitching at sounds he doesn't make. The hobbit's heart stumbles when he peers through a barred window into Thorin's cell. The Dwarf King sits motionless as stone, his forehead resting against the door, whispering words Bilbo can't hear. Perhaps to himself, perhaps to the mountain still leagues away. Thranduil's voice slithers through the dungeon at irregular intervals, smooth as poisoned wine. Beg, he suggests from the other side of the oak door. Kneel, and I'll consider returning your father's trinkets. Thorin's silence is answer enough. The Elf King's laughter follows, light and merciless. Pride makes poor company in the dark, Oakenshield. Days blur. The elves bring food thin broth that tastes of forest mulch, bread hard as river stones. Thorin leaves most of it untouched. His reflection in the water bucket shows hollows beneath his eyes that weren't there before, but his hands don't shake. Not even when the dungeon's whispers grow louder, when the roots seem to curl closer, murmuring of dragons and gold and the terrible weight of crowns. Bilbo watches it all from the edges, his resolve hardening like mithril in a forge. He learns the guards' rotations, the blind spots where torchlight doesn't reach, the way the wine barrels line up near the river gate. A plan takes shape, not with the bold strokes of dwarven axes, but with the quiet precision of a hobbit's touch. Then comes the night Thorin breaks. Not his body, never that, but his voice cracks the stillness like a fault line. You hear it too, don't you? He rasps to the empty air. Bilbo freezes, thinking he's been seen, until Thorin continues, staring at the wall as if it holds a specter. The dragon's breath beneath the mountain, the sound gold makes when it shifts in its sleep. His fingers clench. I should have burned with the rest of them. The words hang like smoke. Bilbo's throat tightens. He's spent weeks hearing Thorin spit defiance, but this, This is the raw nerve beneath the armor. The hobbit slips away before the guard's chain shifts, his mind racing. Pride might keep Thorin from bending, but it won't free him. That will take something far quieter, far cleverer. Something, perhaps, that fits neatly in a hobbit's palm. High above the dungeons, the stars wheel unseen. Somewhere beyond the forest's grasp, the lonely mountain exhales a plume of fire into the night sky. The wind carries the scent of burning pine all the way to Mirkwood's gates, where the river runs black and the wine barrels bob, waiting. The river doesn't care about kings or prophecies. It roars onward, indifferent as time itself. Thorin's knuckles bleach white around the barrel's rim, the rough wood biting into his palms with each violent spin of the current. Around him, the company bobs like discarded corks, their faces pale with nausea and adrenaline. Bilbo's plan had been madness, but madness was all they had left. Dwarves stuffed into wine casks, tossed into the black water like so much Elven refused. The irony isn't lost on Thorin freedom, delivered in the very barrels of a king who refused to aid them. Orc horns split the air behind them, their jagged notes swallowed by the river's thunder. Thorin risks a glance back, just as an arrow embeds itself in the next barrel over Achilles. If the muffled curse is any indication, the current quickens, hurling them toward a bend where the water froths like a rabid beast. For a heartbeat, the world tilts skyward, then they're plunging down a chute of churning foam, barrels crashing together like discordant drums. Dwalin's roar of laughter is sheer defiance, a sound so out of place in their flight that it kindles something stubborn in Thorin's chest. They are alive. Against all odds, they are alive. Then the river spits them into open air. The sudden quiet is deafening. The water widens, slowing to a lazy sprawl as it nears the long lake, its surface shimmering with the first blush of dawn. Thorin's barrel bumps against Bilbo's the Hobbit, clinging to the lid like a sailor to wreckage, his hair plastered to his forehead, eyes wide with disbelief at his own audacity. No words pass between them, but something shifts in the dwarf's gaze. Gratitude, perhaps, or the dawning realization that their burglar has just rewritten the rules of the game. Shouts echo from the shore, not orcs this time, but men, lake town fishermen with nets slung over shoulders, their faces slack with shock as 13 waterlogged dwarves and one bedraggled hobbit wash up on the reedy banks. Thorin staggers to his feet, water sluicing from his coat, and meets the townsfolk's stares with the bearing of a man who's spent decades wearing invisible armor. A child points, her whisper carrying like a prophecy, "The king under the mountain." The words ripple through the crowd, sparking murmurs older than the rotting docks beneath their feet. Legends have long roots here, where the lake's mist still carries whispers of dragon fire. The master of Lake Town arrives in a flurry of velvet and suspicion, his perfumed sleeves pressed to his nose as if poverty itself has a stench. Refugees, he sneers, though his eyes dart to Thorin's sword, too fine for a beggar's tool, but the people don't share his disdain. They press closer, their hands brushing Thorin's sleeves like he's a relic stepped from song. An old woman drops to her knees, her voice cracking. "You've come to kill the dragon. It isn't a question." Thorin's breath catches. The weight of expectation settles on his shoulders, heavier than wet mail. He'd imagined reclaiming Erebor in stealth, in violence, not as some figurehead dredged up from bedtime stories. but the crowd's hope is a fire he can't extinguish. And when Bard the bargeman steps forward, his storm-gray eyes sharp as flint, the air crackles with something new. Not reverence, challenge, you'll bring Smaug's wrath down on us all, he warns, and the truth of it hangs between them, ugly and undeniable. The company gathers around Thorin, their sodden cloaks dripping onto the warped planks. They smell of river rot and desperation, but their spines are straight. For the first time in weeks, the lonely mountain is visible on the horizon, a jagged tooth against the bleeding sky. Close enough to taunt, close enough to haunt. Thorin flexes his stiff fingers, feeling the ghost of a ring he once wore, the one Azog stripped from his father's corpse. The people of Lake Town don't need a king, they need a weapon, and as the morning bells clang overhead, Thorin Oakenshield lets them believe he's both. Lake Town's streets teem with whispers, the air thick with the scent of fish oil and damp wood, and beneath it all, the electric crackle of hope. Children dart between the legs of blacksmiths and washerwomen, their voices piping with excitement. The king has come. Thorin walks through the chaos like a man wading through a dream, his boots sinking slightly into the waterlogged planks. The townsfolk press close, their hands fluttering like moths toward his cloak, as if touching him might transfer some of the mountain's promised gold to their empty pockets. Their desperation is a living thing, pulsing in time with the creaking of the rotting docks. The master of Lake Town's feast is a grotesque pantomime of plenty, tables grown under roasted fowl and honeyed figs, while just beyond the hall's gilded doors, hollow-cheeked fishermen count their last coins. Thorin sits at the high table, his goblet untouched, his eyes fixed on the distant silhouette of Erebor through the stained glass windows. The master leans close, his breath reeking of spiced wine. A token of goodwill, he murmurs, sliding a velvet pouch across the table. Inside, a single gem winks in the candlelight, a sapphire the size of a walnut, looted from some long-dead trader's cargo. Thorin's fingers close around it, his throat tight. This trinket, stolen and bartered, is but a shadow of the hoard that waits beneath the mountain. That night, torchlight paints the town square in flickering gold as Thorin addresses the crowd. His voice, honed in the forges of Erd-Lewin, rolls over the gathered faces like thunder. The dragon's shadow ends here, he vows, and the people roar back, their voices raw with longing. The dwarves stand shoulder to shoulder behind him, their chests swelling even Bomber, still pale from Mirkwood's poison, grips his belt with renewed strength. Only Bilbo lingers at the edges, his toes curling against the damp wood. He sees what the others miss, the way Thorin's hand trembles when he speaks of the treasury, the feverish gleam in his eyes when someone mentions the Arkenstone. In the cramped attic, where the company sleeps, Thorin paces like a caged wolf. The others snore on straw pallets, but Bilbo watches through slitted eyes as the Dwarf King kneels by the lone window, his profile etched in moonlight. From his pocket, Thorin draws the sapphire, turning it over and over, his lips moving in silent conversation with ghosts. Somewhere out on the lake, a loon cries a sound like laughter or mourning. Bilbo pulls his blanket tighter. The mountain looms in the distance, its peak jagged against the stars, and for the first time, the hobbit wonders if the real threat isn't the dragon at all, but what the gold will do to the dwarves who seek to reclaim it. Dawn brings a flotilla of makeshift rafts, their decks stacked with supplies grudgingly gifted by the master. The townsfolk line the shore, their faces a mosaic of hope and hunger. An old woman presses a cloth-wrapped loaf into Thorin's hand, her last, by the look of her sunken cheeks. He hesitates, then tucks it into his coat with a nod. The gesture is lost on no one, least of all Bard, who stands apart with his arms crossed. "You'll drown us all in fire," he calls as the rafts push off. Thorin doesn't look back. The wind fills the sails, carrying them toward the shadow of the mountain, where the lake's still waters reflect neither sky nor light, only the memory of flame. The stone grinds open with a sound like the earth itself sighing, a slow, reluctant groan that hasn't echoed through these halls since Smaug first coiled himself around the heart of the mountain. Cold air rushes out, thick with the scent of charred stone and something richer, deeper, the metallic tang of untouched gold, the musk of centuries sealed away. Thorin's breath catches. The key in his hand feels suddenly insignificant, a child's toy compared to the weight of the darkness before him. Moonlight spills over the threshold, illuminating motes of dust that swirl like forgotten memories. One step, that's all it takes. The floor beneath his boots is smoother than he expected, worn down by generations of dwarven feet before the dragon came. His fingers brush the wall cool, unyielding stone, etched with runes, so old even Balin hesitates to read them aloud. The company clusters behind him, their whispers bouncing off the tunnel's close walls. Philly's torch gutters, casting frantic shadows that twist into shapes too much like claws. Quiet, Thorin murmurs, though his own pulse roars in his ears. The dark here isn't just absence of light. It's a presence, patient and watchful. The tunnel slopes downward, the ceiling arching higher until the torchlight can't reach it. Dwalin's axe scrapes against rock as he shifts his grip. Feels like walking into a tomb. He mutters, and no one argues. The air grows warmer the deeper they go, carrying whispers of sulfur and heat that raise the hair on Bilbo's neck. Then, a glow, faint at first, a dull red pulse at the end of the passage, like embers in a dying hearth. Thorin freezes. He knows that light, has dreamed of it, choked on the memory of it. Dragon fire. Bilbo edges forward, his hobbit feet soundless on the stone. The tunnel opens abruptly onto a ledge, and there, below them, coiled around pillars of gold and shattered masonry, lies Smaug. Even in sleep, the dragon is a nightmare-given scale. His ribs rise and fall like bellows, each breath stirring the treasure beneath him into a soft, metallic chorus. A single slit pupilled eye, larger than a shield, glints beneath a half-closed lid. Thorin's knuckles whiten around Orchrist. This is the thing that took his home, his birthright, his father's sanity. The thing that turned dwarven song into silence. Balin's hand clamps onto Thorin's shoulder, his voice barely audible. The Arkenstone lies somewhere in that mess. But lad, even if we find it, waking that beast is suicide. Thorin doesn't answer. His gaze sweeps over the hoard. Coins and goblets, swords and crowns, all melted together into a single glittering sea. Somewhere in that wreckage is the heart of the mountain, the symbol of his right to rule. The dragon shifts, his tail sending a cascade of gold tinkling down the mound. The sound is almost musical, almost like the Song of Durin, if the song had been twisted into something greedy and sharp. Bilbo swallows hard. The contract in his pocket feels suddenly heavier. Burglar, the word tastes like ash. He meets Thorin's eyes, sees the fire reflected in them, not just the dragon's, but the one that's burned in the dwarf's chest for decades. No words pass between them, but the understanding is there, clear as the runes on the hidden door. This is why they came. This is where the story turns. The hobbit takes a shuddering breath, his fingers finding the cool metal of the ring in his pocket. Some doors, once opened, can't be closed again. The ledge trembles as Smaug exhales, a plume of smoke curling from his nostrils. Somewhere deep in the mountain, a loose gem clatters down the treasure pile. The company holds its breath. The dragon doesn't wake, not yet, but the air itself seems to tighten, as if the mountain knows the reckoning is coming. Bilbo's fingers brush the ring in his pocket, its metal unnaturally warm against his skin, as if it pulses in time with the dragon's breaths. The moment it slips onto his finger, the world bends. Colors drain to shades of gray, sounds dull as though heard through wool, and the very air feels thicker, resistant to his movements. Yet nothing compares to the weight of Smaug's presence. Even invisible, Bilbo's knees tremble as he creeps forward, each step sending tiny avalanches of coins skittering down the hoard. The dragon's scales gleam like polished onyx in the dim glow of his own smoldering heat, each one the size of a dinner plate and just as unyielding. Then the voice comes, not a roar, not a growl, but a purr, smooth as honey laced with poison. Thief, Smaug murmurs, and the word curls through the cavern like smoke, searching. I smell you, I hear your rabbit heart pattering. Bilbo freezes, his breath trapped in his throat. The dragon's great eye cracks open, a vertical slit of molten gold, fixed on nothing and everything at once. From the tunnel's mouth, Thorin watches, his grip on Orchrist so tight, his fingers ache. He can't see Bilbo, but he hears the hobbit's gasp as Smaug shifts, sending a wave of treasure cascading like water. The dragon's laughter is a sound of grinding boulders. Come now, little sneak. Did you think darkness could hide you from me? A forked tongue flicks out, tasting the air. Gold has its own song. It sings of every hand that's touched it, and yours reeks of dwarves. The words slither into Thorin's ears, wrapping around his thoughts like vines. Dwarves, Smaug lingers on the syllable, savoring it, twisting it into something covetous and small. Tell me, invisible one, do they still dream of their trinkets? Their toys. A claw stirs the hoard, revealing the hilt of a shattered sword, the twisted remains of a child's cradle. Look how they tarnish, how they wait. Bilbo's voice, when he finds it, is barely a whisper. We only want what's ours. Ours. Smaug's spine arches, his wings stretching to blot out the cavern ceiling. You carry no scent of dragon sickness, little thief, but him. The great head turns, nostrils flaring toward the tunnel where Thorin stands. Oh, I know that pride. That hunger, it festers in the blood of kings. Thorin's vision swims. The treasure pulses before him, no longer coins and gems but faces. His grandfather's empty eyes, his father's trembling hands. The Arkenstone is out there, buried in the glittering waste, and the thought of it sends heat coiling through his veins. Balin's warning echoes dimly. Gold sings louder when dragons are near. Smaug's chuckle is a landslide of embers. Run back to your would-be king, thief. Tell him the mountain remembers. Tell him. A ripple passes through the dragon's body, the scales lifting like a cat's fur before the pounce. I remember. Bilbo stumbles backward, his foot dislodging a goblet that rolls with a clatter. The dragon's head snaps toward the sound, and for a heartbeat, the hobbit swears those golden eyes see straight through the ring's magic. Then Smaug exhales, a jet of steam curling toward the ceiling. "Fly, little moth," he murmurs, "before you burn." Thorin doesn't hear Bilbo's frantic retreat. His gaze is fixed on the horde. On the way, the torchlight dances across its surface like liquid fire. The dragon's voice has sunk into his bones, a whisper now indistinguishable from his own thoughts. "It's yours. Take it." The others are speaking, pulling at his arms, but their words are distant, smothered beneath the song of gold. Somewhere in the dark, Smaug smiles. The cup gleams in Bilbo's trembling hands, a simple thing, really, compared to the sea of treasure around it. But its theft cracks the mountain's silence like a hammer to glass. Smaug's eye slits open, then the world erupts. Stone shrieks as the dragon uncoils, his wings snapping wide to blot out the cavern ceiling. Gold cascades in molten rivers as he rises, his scales clicking like 1,000 knives being drawn. Thief, the word isn't a roar but a lash of sound that sends Bilbo sprawling, the cup tumbling from his grip. The hobbit scrambles backward, the ring's cool metal biting into his palm, but Smaug doesn't strike. Not yet. His laughter is worse, a slow, crackling thing like timber surrendering to flame. "Run, little rodent. Tell your dwarves their doom has wings." Above, in the torchlit passages, Thorin doesn't hear the dragon's wrath. He stands ankle deep in coin, his fingers sifting through the hoard with feverish urgency. The Arkenstone is here. It must be. Balin's voice cuts through the clatter. "Thorin," the beast stirs, but the Dwarf King barely flinches. "Search faster," he snarls, his voice raw as a fresh wound. The gold whispers to him, sings to him, its voice louder than the distant rumble of collapsing stone. Then the mountain vomits fire. Smaug's fury tears through the secret door, his bulk reducing ancient runes to rubble as he launches into the twilight sky. Lake Town's distant lights flicker like cowardly stars as the dragon banks east, his shadow swallowing the moon. The dwarves crowd the broken threshold, their faces painted orange by the inferno below. "He's going to burn them all," Killy breathes, but Thorin doesn't look. His hands are full of gems, their edges carving half-moons into his palms. Bilbo staggers into the chamber, his coat smoldering. "Thorin, listen. The people of Lake Town have no part in this." The plea hangs in the sulfur-thick air. For a heartbeat, the king hesitates, his gaze flickering to the distant flames. Then his fingers close around a goblet, its rim dented by dragon claws. "They harbored us," he mutters. "Their greed is no purer than ours." The words taste like ash, but he swallows them anyway. Dwalin steps forward, his axe heavy at his side. "Lad," he says, softer than steel has any right to sound. Thorin whirls, his eyes reflecting the horde's glow. Not blue anymore, but a sickly, gold-flecked yellow. "You question your king." The silence that follows is brittle as ice on a shallow pond. Balin reaches out, then lets his hand fall. Some fractures run too deep to mend. Outside, Smaug's wings beat the sky into a storm. The first thatch roof catches like kindling, screams threading the smoke. Thorin turns his back on the devastation, his boots crunching over jewels as he resumes his search. The Arkenstone is waiting. The mountain is his. Nothing else matters, not even the sound of filly whispering. What have we done? As the night burns. Somewhere beneath the gold, the heart of Erebor thrums not in triumph, but in mourning. The dragon's death scream splits the sky, a sound so vast it shakes the roots of the mountain. Far below, Bard's arrow still smolders in the ruins of Lake Town, its blackened shaft the only proof that men can topple gods. Thorin stands at Erebor's broken gate, the wind carrying ashes and the metallic tang of blood. The dragon is gone, the gold is his, and yet, the weight in his chest isn't triumph. It's the slow, sickening realization of what he's become. Voices rise from the valley. Not cheers, but the clatter of armor, the snap of elven banners unfurling. Thranduil's host glimmers like a frost-edged blade in the dawn light, while the men of Lake Town trudge behind, their faces hollow with grief and newfound hunger. They've come for their share, Dwalin mutters, spitting the word share like a curse. Thorin's fingers twitch toward Orchrist, but the blade feels foreign in his grip, too heavy with the memory of all the wrong hands it's been in. The Parley is a knife's edge. Thranduil's smile never reaches his glacier-pale eyes. You owe these people reparations, Oakenshield, or have you forgotten the fire your quest brought down upon them? Thorin's retort is ash on his tongue. He wants to snarl, to remind the Elf King of withheld aid and centuries of grudges. But Bilbo's gaze burns hotter than Smaug's flames. The hobbit stands apart, his pockets empty of the Arkenstone, but full of something heavier, disappointment. War comes anyway. The orcs descend like a blight, their war drums throbbing in time with Thorin's pulse. Azog's pale flesh is a banner of its own, his metal claw glinting as he points toward the mountain toward him. The elves and men turn as one, their temporary alliance forged in the face of a greater foe. Thorin watches from the ramparts, the gold sickness peeling away like scales, leaving him raw. We cannot let the mountain fall again, he whispers, and the words taste clean. For the first time in months, he thinks not of treasure, but of home. The battle is a storm of steel and screams. Thorin fights like a dwarf half his age, Orchrist carving through orc flesh, with a king's fury and a penitent's desperation. Killy and Filly guard his flanks, their laughter long gone, but their loyalty unbroken. When Azog's mace finds Thorin's ribs, the pain is almost a relief, a debt paid in blood instead of gold. Bilbo finds him leaning against a broken pillar, the sky above streaked with smoke and the last light of day. The hobbit's hands are shaking, but his voice doesn't. You looked like yourself again, he says, and it's the kindest lie Thorin's ever heard. The dwarf's breath rattles, but his grip on Bilbo's shoulder is firm. I would take back my words at the gate, he murmurs, and my deeds at the treasure hoard. The wind carries the scent of pine from distant hills, and for a moment, Thorin swears he hears it, the Song of Durin, not as a dirge, but as a lullaby. The mountain stands, the eagles circle, and somewhere, deep in the stone, the gold cools at last.
you.